After Mark gets his blue suit and ends up clearing up the events of the Invincible War, he's testing out some enhanced bracers made by a robot to help him not put so much weight on his injured body parts when suddenly he's knocked away from a strange red dinosaur-like man with cybernetic enhancements across its body. This creature named Dinosaurus tells Mark that he's caused unprecedented damage to this world by helping humans clean up the devastation that happened in the massive Invincible War. Dinosaurus tells Mark that if he and the heroes wouldn't have helped to rebuild the cities, it would have taken years and the effort would have employed millions worldwide, offering job stability and bringing about age of prosperity. He says that in the time that it would have taken, perhaps the destruction in these cities would have made them vacant, drastically lowering the carbon impact of the affected areas all over the world, and maybe even ending climate change. This continues as Invincible starts to get serious and punches Dinosaurus right in the face, knocking him back into his human form. But being really pissed off at recent events, Mark grabs the man by his neck, not willing to hear any more about how doing bad things can have great effects. However, this isn't the last time he'll be hearing from the Red Menace. And Mark gets a call as part of his Invincible Inc. company, which notifies him of crimes as he flies to Las Vegas to find Dinosaurus causing a massive commotion as he throws cars and sends everyone running, commanding them all to run for their lives and get as far away as possible. Invincible and Dinosaurus trade blows of the red beast drawing blood every time it hits Mark, and he tells Mark that if he were a true hero, he'd actually be helping him. Confused, Mark is like, help with what? Destroying Las Vegas? To which Dino replies, no, helping me evacuate Las Vegas before it gets destroyed. It's here where he explains that Las Vegas is a man-made oasis in the middle of a naturally formed desert, and that the natural drain of resources caused by its existence is contributing greatly to climate change, which is evidenced by the nearby Colorado River quickly drying up. Dino's plan is to wipe the city out and turn it into miles and miles of solar panels to farm sustainable energy, and as Mark tries to defuse the charge he finds, Dinosaurus says there's no hope since there's far too many, as they all go off at once, and Las Vegas is turned into glass. He starts to get depressed, realizing the destruction that happened under his watch, so after some time, Cecil brings Mark to Vegas to show him a new project they're working on, where it's revealed that Cecil and the government have covered the entire area of a solar energy farm, with them working really hard to absorb double the energy from the sun using the glass floor by inventing double-sided solar panels. Mark looks confused why they're pretty much doing what Dinosaurus was suggesting of the solar panels, but Cecil says that these panels will be able to provide clean energy for nearly half of the country, and because the construction is a public project, it'll create jobs for thousands of Americans. This causes Mark to almost stumble a bit as he takes a few steps back and turns to walk away, saying, whoa, Dinosaurus was right. From here, everyone goes home as Mark tells Adam Eve that he has a crazy plan and she just needs to trust him because things are about to get dangerous. Later on in that same night, as Cecil lays in his mysterious bath, Donald runs into the room telling him that they have trouble with Invincible attempting to break out Dinosaurus and becomes an enemy of the US. When he arrives to break him out, the human version of the villain tells Mark that the two of them actually have different consciousnesses and that he believes that Dinosaurus is a psychopath. But Mark tells him that he needs him to transform now, as the man tells Mark that the only way that he can transform is by not really caring about something, which makes Mark tell him his entire origin story. Dinosaurus tells Mark that he must be insane because the only reason he would be there is to break him out, and Mark tells the Red Beast that his methods are extreme, but if they work together they can do great things while making sure that nobody dies in the process. At this point, Cecil's reanimants storm the room to stop him from leaving as Mark's villain arc begins. Cecil interrogates Adam Eve, saying that he's worried that Mark might have been working for his father this entire time, and that's how he's handling this situation. Far away, we see a secret base cut into the side of a mountain as a newly dripped out Dinosaurus questions if Mark is ready, but Mark says, yeah, let's save the world. As time goes on, Dinosaurus has Mark digging massive irrigation channels all across the United States for an unknown purpose, but eventually Dinosaurus tells him that the Guardians of the Globe are being attacked by a nearby villain, so the two rush there despite not being on good terms with the team. From here, Dinosaurus and Invincible fight the villain together and actually even take him out, saving everyone, but they're confronted by the Guardians who try to bring them in unsuccessfully before they escape into the skies. Eventually, Mark goes home and explains himself to Adam Eve, saying he doesn't fully trust Dinosaurus yet, but he thinks the benefit of what they're doing outweighs the risk of all of this backfiring on him. Cecil walks into the room through a light door, asking Mark just where this ends, and after hearing Mark out, he can't help but think that the boy is just way too naive if he thinks he can actually control someone like Dinosaurus, promising that things are going to go wrong, and unfortunately, Cecil had no way of knowing just how right he was at this moment. Despite the fact that the Viltrumites may seem all-powerful in Invincible Season 2, there's actually something out there that brings them down to the level of just your average everyday human, and that would be something that has haunted the Viltrumites down for generations: a virus. virus. Long ago, the Viltrumites built a galactic empire on the backs of those who they conquered from planet to planet in a campaign that would continue to spread for 1,000 years, strengthening the numbers of the Viltrumites. This ended, however, when eventually, on one of the planets they'd long since conquered, a group of alien scientists were able to develop a virus called the Scourge virus that specifically targeted Viltrumite DNA. And this virus would quickly spread through the entire Viltrumite population throughout the cosmos, dwindling their numbers down to a new low, while those who survived needed to band together suddenly due to the virus completely removing their superhuman strength and durability for some time until they recover. Those who survive were just the ones able to adapt to this virus just enough to stay alive. However, soon it'll be back with a vengeance, and we explained how Alan and Oliver brought this virus to Earth to try and take out the Viltrumites that were there. However, ultimately it's only Mark that gets infected as his eyes start to bleed and he passes out into Alan's arms and ultimately gets taken off planet to the moon, which actually allows some pretty interesting events to happen, like Cecil and the Guardians meeting the king of the Viltrumites, Thragg, but that's a story for another time. When Mark is infected, he stays in a coma for quite some time as Viltrumite doctors work on him and try to get it out of his system, since they're the only ones who've ever managed to save someone from this virus. Days go by as Eve puts on a hazmat suit and goes into the room, asking the doctors if Mark can hear her, but since these are Viltrumites, they don't even comfort her by saying yes, only telling Eve that Mark's fever has him currently, and standing there confused as she cries for him and says she can't do this without him, as they pull her out of the room and tell her they need to run more tests and she'll only be in the way. However, eventually Dinosaurus makes it onto the base and offers his own help, until eventually he decides that it's time to get Mark out of there when Thragg risked it all and put Mark's life in danger. This starts with a short battle between Dinosaurus and Thragg, where he breaks his own hand trying to slash the Viltrumite king. Now in this moment, Thragg could instantly end him, but Dinosaurus starts explaining all of Viltrumite history to Thragg, explaining that he shouldn't have given him access to their files on this ship since it's the last vessel of the Viltrumite Empire, and he knows that Thragg wouldn't want anything to happen to it. During his time there, he's discovered areas that he could adjust and link to his heart rate so that they'd explode the moment that it stops. Thragg continues attacking regardless as the ship begins to blow up around them. From here, Dinosaurus tries everything he can to stop Thragg, even destroying all of his own teeth to try and bite him, but as the base continues to explode, Thragg runs off to try and salvage it, allowing Dinosaurus to grab Mark and put the two of them in an escape pod to Earth, and things are about to get very dangerous. We've explained how these two basically went on their own villain arc, trying to change the world in drastic ways for the better against the wishes of Cecil and the others. But everything stopped for a while because Mark was infected with a virus, or so he thought. While Mark was in his coma, nothing stopped for Dinosaurus, who set in motion one final plan because he didn't believe Mark would ever regain his powers and help him again, because Earth is reaching the tipping point where climate change will not only become irreversible, but it'll also accelerate to the point where billions of humans die. Dinosaurus says millions must fall so that billions can rise, as Mark says, "What did you do?" And our Red Dino friend tells Mark that he'll find his answers in the city of Los Angeles, but it's too late for him to stop it, as sorry as Dino is about how things are going to unfold. Mark goes flying out and crashing into the sewers of downtown LA, where he finds a large device, and as he communicates with the new Guardians of the Globe, they get teleported all over in an attempt to disarm these devices that Mark keeps finding. But as these devices cause massive earthquakes in LA, Dinosaurus says this was all just a distraction, as we zoom out on the globe and see massive explosions in Iceland that send tidal waves all over Earth, and Mark is responsible as we all drown. Invincible should have never trusted this villain as much as he did, because as he grabs Dinosaurus and sends him flying into the sky, Mark realizes it's too late to stop whatever Dinosaurus has planned, as the red monster tells him to keep watching. It's here where, like we explained before, the entire world begins to flood, as all over in every city, we see massive waves forming. Mark freaks out saying, "No, this is the end of everything." But Dinosaurus tells him that he's only trying to wipe out a significant portion of the population, and after this they'll be able to fix things and turn civilization around, since really that's what him and Mark have been trying to do this entire time. Right? Mark responds, "No, you're insane. None of this will fix anything. In fact, you ruined it all." Thankfully for him, this is a world filled with superheroes, as Cecil has been recruiting non-stop, and they spring into action where we see some of the members of the new Guardians of the Globe, like Yeti, diving into the waters to save lives. In the command station, we see that the one coordinating all the rescue efforts is Robot, or should I say Rex, since that's what he likes to call himself now. But thanks to his efforts, he was able to get hero teams on the East and West Coast, while at the same time he was able to think of an invention that should stop the flooding all around the world. But it's gonna take 3 weeks to build. In the meantime, we see Invincible and Dinosaurus rocketing towards the ground as Invincible screams that now everyone is going to look at him like he's responsible for this, as the Beast says he doesn't understand what harming him will do at this point while they slam into the ground, because Mark has had enough and it's time for his villain arc to end. The two of them fight in the rising waters of the city while Dinosaurus tries to explain that he thought Invincible would understand. Considering the last time he did something like this, even Mark admitted that wiping out Vegas did actually help change things for the better. It's here where, begging Mark to trust him, he keeps getting hit, so he sends Invincible flying into a building. Our Red Dino buddy tells Mark that now he's really confused because Mark has never been able to beat this guy in a battle of strength, leaving Dinosaurus to wonder if Mark wants to die here because he's scared that everyone is going to hate him, because he's scared of what comes after this and might just want to go out as a hero who at least looks like he tried to put a stop to this. He crashes onto Mark saying, "Nah, I don't buy it at all. What are you, just angry? Sure, I understand that, but look past that and look into the future where you and I save the world. Who cares if everyone hates us? Are we doing this for credit or doing it to save the world because we care?" It's crazy because Dinosaurus really makes sense with the things he says, but his actions are just way too extreme. So Mark punches him right across the face, and as the news cameras find them, he drags him across the water all over LA, screaming and telling Dinosaurus that he thought they could save the world, but now he's just an accomplice in destroying it. So now, for the sake of humanity, at the very least, Dinosaurus has to die. This leads to Dinosaurus finally realizing that there's no reasoning with Mark, as he grabs him on both sides of his head and squeezes until you hear a pop and Invincible dies. It's a sad day. After causing nearly the entire planet to flood, Mark tries to do the right thing by taking down Dinosaurus once and for all. But in front of the entire world, as a news camera flies overhead, they watch as Dinosaurus tears Mark into two pieces, while we see the reaction of nearly every character we've met so far in the series. Everything goes black, as suddenly, Mark wakes up in an empty dark void asking where he is. He starts to reason with himself, saying since there's no light here, he shouldn't be able to see himself, and it's kind of like the opposite of Cecil's white room. But while he screams into the abyss, eventually a voice answers back. "Hello, Mark Grayson." Mark questions the voice, asking what happened after the building collapsed on him during his fight. He can't seem to remember. The voice tells Mark that he died, or at least that's what he made the people watching believe. The voice, revealing itself to be Dinosaurus, tells Mark that he had so much access to information while he was on the Viltrumite ship, meaning at this point he knows more about the Viltrumites and their biology than Mark does. Mark isn't entirely buying it though, asking where Dinosaurus is right now, and the beast answers that he's actually standing right in front of Mark. But Mark's mind is basically disconnected from his body because of a frequency that Dinosaurus used, which took weeks to figure out. Combine this with Cecil's trick in season 3, and it's really obvious that Viltrumites have to do something about their ears. However, continuing on, Dinosaurus explains in detail just what he did, telling Mark that he cloned him using DNA gathered from the test they did early on, but originally the clone was just a backup for Mark in case his powers never came back, so that at the very least, some version of him could keep protecting the world. However, since Dinosaurus can't make a perfect clone that can also think and interact with the world, he ended up with basically just a lifelike mannequin of Mark, which ultimately only came in handy during their battle, as he switched Mark out with the fake, killed it, and then retreated using Cecil's teleporter technology. This just shows you how dangerous Dinosaurus is before you ever even get into a physical fight. But like always, he rationalizes his decision by telling Mark that he actually did him a favor. Now that everyone thinks he's dead, he's finally free. He has no responsibilities, no obligations. If he wants, he's free to save the world as much as he likes from behind the scenes by continuing his work with Dinosaurus if he's really the man the monster thinks he is. And this is where Invincible has enough and he says the quiet part out loud. What if you're wrong? Dinosaurus just flooded most of the planet and sacrificed millions, maybe billions of people on just an idea he has that they need to lower the population so they can properly rebuild and avoid the coming cataclysm on the horizon that stems from overpopulation and pollution. Mark says that at the end of the day, Dinosaurus is just delaying the inevitable. With people scared of the future, they tried to adapt as much as possible, tried to find new energies and new ways to make things better and avoid the future. However, now they'll just stick to their old comfortable ways since the danger has been pushed away. This means that really, in the grand scheme of things, all of those people in the floods died for nothing. And Mark tells Dinosaurus that maybe he's lost sight of himself and become the villain in his own story, because villains tend to think they're the hero. As Mark continues on, he explains that all this time, he repeatedly tried to explain to everyone that what they were doing had a just reason. But now, he realizes that he was just trying to convince himself that he hadn't turned into the bad guy, that he wasn't becoming a villain. And now, he realized that that's what was happening all along. Finally realizing that Mark was right, Dinosaurus lets Invincible out of his weird mental slumber, freeing him and telling him that he finally understands what Mark is trying to say, but he won't be able to stop himself from trying again. Ultimately, he wants to help so badly that something is going to drive him to do something. So he tells Mark to do the only thing he can think of. As Invincible walks out of the building covered in blood and sits off on the side of the base, Cecil arrives through a teleporter, telling Mark that he really messed up now. And as they go over the body count and robot solutions, Mark asks to be able to speak to Eve one more time before he goes to jail for causing all of this, and instead, Cecil gives him an earpiece, asking him to come work for him again because it wouldn't be the first time he hired a villain. And just, that's some beautiful writing.